This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the CEO of Premier American Uranium, Mr. Tim Rotolo. Tim, it's great to have you back on. It's been a few months. Congrats on Premier and congrats on the timing. It's absolutely impeccable. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Gerardo. Thanks for having me,
Well,
and appreciate the kind words.
no, absolutely. Look, I think we should have a discussion first and foremost about your background because I'm very familiar with it, but it is unique in a couple of aspects, and I wanted you to touch on that a bit and a little bit on your background in the uranium space because if I'm not mistaken, your thesis kind of plays into what you're doing now in a weird arching kind of way, right?
Yeah, I think of it as being a little bit circuitous, but I think it is definitely differentiated from a lot of the other mining CEOs who probably have much more traditional backgrounds as geologists or having worked directly in the mining industry. I guess I kind of think of myself as an entrepreneur or an investor first, which probably aligns in with a number of mining executives, but certainly my background and how I arrived at this position is very unique. So as many of you may know, I partnered with Mike Alkin in 2018 to launch Sachem Cove, which is a dedicated uranium mining strategy. Obviously, Mike is one of the most kind of prolific thought leaders in the space and has just absolutely nailed the thesis. And so we've been, in and around the space, Mike probably for 2 years prior to that. And so, we really started this as investors, realizing that there was this supply deficit forming. And, one of the earliest investments that Sachem Cove made was staking some land in Wyoming around what's now our Cyclone project. And, back then we looked at it and said, man, the U.S. has gone from being a self-sufficient, miner domestically for its own production and own nuclear power needs to basically producing nothing. And, that just historically didn't make sense to us, but also recognize that the U.S. is an incredibly safe jurisdiction. And so if the U.S., if the supply deficit thesis played out, there was going to be a need for pounds in safe jurisdictions. And so, we set about forming what was kind of the predecessor company to Premier American called Premier Uranium. And then we just sat and we waited. In the interim, I had the good fortune of kind of conceptualizing URNM and building that from, zero of assets to about $1 billion. And then we sold it to Sprott in 2021. And then kind of went back to the day-to-day of being involved with Sachem Cove and, had the good fortune of meeting, Phil Williams and Marty Tunney and the rest of the team at Consolidated on an investor trip out to see White Mesa after they did the transaction with Energy Fuels. And Mike and I had already been kind of talking about the fact that the sector was really inflecting. This was in mid-2022, and it felt like utilities were coming back to market and contracting. The price had certainly not moved quite as much as it has now, but it was the trajectory and the direction was, where we thought we needed it to be to start seriously considering trying to take Premier public. And so actually had a chance to tour around with the technical team at Consolidated, now ISO, and realized that we were at a huge disadvantage at Premier. We needed partners, we needed a team, and we looked at the transaction that now ISO did with Labrador Uranium and the way they spun that out and put a team together and really scaled Labrador off of the on the back of the ISO resources, and immediately had a meeting of the minds with Phil and said, that's the path for us. We were already an investor with Phil and had done a number of the transactions. So we're very comfortable with the team. I don't think I could have picked a better platform to have joined forces with. The technical expertise that we get for the U.S. is just unparalleled given our size. So, and then we get the capital markets expertise. We get the unbelievable IR and marketing resources. And so that really set that visit out to White Mesa, set us down the path on doing a transaction with ISO. They were going to spin out Premier and put their U.S. assets in, or some of the assets, 8 DOE leases. And then we included our Cyclone project from Wyoming and some claims that we have in Colorado. And that formed the basis of Premier American Uranium. And then, the company began we did a financing in the summertime, and then we were able to do a formal listing on the TSXV on December 1st, and now we're off to the races.
Tim, that's an excellent overview. Can you walk me through the share structure? And then obviously we're going to talk about how you, Mike, and the team, nailed the uranium call and where you see it going, because I believe it's early innings if we're using, the baseball analogy. But walk me through the share structure, because it's impressive. It's well structured. It's tight. What does that look like? Major shareholders and market cap as of right now?
Sure. So again, I don't think I've really highlighted this enough, but when we set out to build this company, we looked at a lot of the other junior mining companies. So obviously Sachem and Mike, are investors in just about every company that has touched the uranium space in one way or another, right? We've done a number of financings. We've met pretty much every management team and, looked at those companies and said, what are the things that we like about them? What are the things that we don't like? And let's really try and emphasize the things that are most important to us. And those were, a long-term value orientation to management, highly aligned shareholder base, and a focus on, very disciplined capital allocation. And so those are really the mantra of this business. And so when you look at our shareholders and the shareholder structure, that's one of the first things that we tried to lead with. So Sachem owns, close to 45% of the company. We are very long-term oriented shareholders. Consolidated, as a result of the spinoff, owns about 13%. One of our large investors owns roughly 5%, and then Mega Uranium also owns 5%. We have about 28 million shares outstanding. As of today, the share price is about $1.70, so that gets us to do this math quickly. About 47 million Canadian market cap. We have about 6 million Canadian of cash on the balance sheet as a result of our financing, and we just think we're really well positioned, given where the market is, and obviously, we have just unbelievable firepower. Sorry, I think I referred to them as consolidated ISO. We think we're in a really unique position in that we have existing cash on the balance sheet, but we also have unbelievable partners behind this business. And so as we look to grow, and really the way that we think about growth is on two paths. One is exploration and development of our existing assets. So we have a drill program planned for Q2 of 2024 in Wyoming. We hope to have more to announce on our Colorado assets, and then an aggressive M&A program, because our central view, very much aligned with what ISO has been doing, is there is a need for consolidation. There's a even greater need for consolidation at the lower end in the U.S. And so we want to scale up as quickly as possible, and just continue developing our exploration assets at the same time. So having the backing of Sachem, ISO, and Mega is, I just think, a real ace up our sleeve that a lot of our peers will not be able to compete with. And so hopefully that makes us that much more of an attractive acquirer to them.
I couldn't agree more. You clearly have the capital markets experience. You have the technical acumen. You have assets in a top-notch jurisdiction at a time where geopolitically is going to prove, I think, very, very strategically valuable. Clearly, you have a plan for M&A and growth. what do you see developing in the uranium space as it relates to supply, demand, and the spot price? Because I gotta believe that for you to be as aggressive as you are on the M&A front and looking for accretive transactions, that's got to be fueled somewhat by an optimistic view of where uranium is headed. And obviously, with you and Mike and the team, you have your finger on the pulse as much as anyone out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't have such a large ownership position in the company if we didn't have a very optimistic view on supply demand. And I actually think that's another differentiator. I'll go back to your specific question, but I think when we look at how a lot of decision making is done at our peer mining companies, not enough of it, in our opinion, is driven by supply demand modeling. And that has really been a hallmark of what is Mike's built the reputation of Sachem on, is you got to do the work and you got to understand the math. The math just happens to favor a very large supply deficit today, which we believe means materially higher prices. And we think that that's in the offing, soon. And so, again, I don't want to put specific numbers on it, but directionally, we think the market needs to continue to move higher. You now have, this potential Russian ban out there, which is very positive for U.S. miners. And so we just think the backdrop continues to be incredibly supportive of businesses like this. And as we've always said, that about Premier, when we owned the company inside of our fund and it was private, we told investors there is a home for companies like this because the supply deficit is so large. And so, we continue to believe that, intensely. And it's probably more true today than ever because building big mines is challenging. Building mines is challenging. Mining uranium is difficult business. And so we should not sit here and assume that, a lot of these mines that many models have coming online are just going to come online that easily. I think there's going to be hiccups. We've already seen some hiccups this year, around specific companies or specific jurisdictions. And so the world is going to need, a lot of projects, and even smaller scale projects are going to, be viable, right? And particularly with uranium looking like it could stay higher for longer, right? This is not just a cyclical boom bust. Not saying that this is a 20-year opportunity that uranium prices are going to stay high forever, but it certainly feels like the structural deficit is here to stay for quite some time. And that should result in higher prices for longer than people are anticipating. And I apologize, I've lost my train of thought.
No, that was a perfect answer. I know you didn't want to put a number to how high you think uranium goes, but clearly you feel it goes higher, and clearly you feel that, the supply demand fundamentals are as favorable as they've been for decades and possibly ever, just looking back historically.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think that the structural backdrop here is incredibly positive. And we've seen this really interesting, maybe not for those management companies who have their stocks have underperformed, but there has been a material underperformance of the smaller cap or really micro cap part of the sector. And that's, another factor that gets us excited for M&A. There are companies out there whose stocks have really not participated in a meaningful way. And I think they're probably a little bit tired and looking for paths to create value for their shareholders. And I think, one of the easiest ways for them to do that is to, partner with a company like ours that does have access to this capital markets platform. And ultimately, the additional resources that we can bring to bear with our partnership with ISO just puts us in a really kind of special position to be acquisitive today.
Well, listen, you're in the right jurisdiction. You have the right supply demand fundamentals. You have past production. You have a historic resource base. Your timing is right on point, and you have all the capital markets experience to make it a really, really profitable couple of years for shareholders. Tim, thank you for your time. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think your last point is maybe the thing that I want people to take away from our business, right? That, you know, as a CEO, I'm not taking any compensation, and Sachem owns 46% of the company. You know, we have one North Star here, which is shareholder value creation. And we're going to use, you know, all of our knowledge of the sector to make sure that we're navigating the markets as effectively as we possibly can. And if there's a situation where, you know, we think M&A no longer makes sense, we're not going to do that, right? We're going to be highly disciplined in how we allocate the capital that's been given to us by shareholders. But just know that, you know, there's no one more aligned than our group alongside shareholders. And again, I just don't think many management teams out there can say that. And to your point, you know, we've been fortunate to have timed this quite well, and we're going to try and maximize our position in the market and really try and grow this business as quickly as we can.
Tim, thanks again. Looking forward to having you back on in what appears to be a very, very busy 2024 for you and for shareholders.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
All right. Cheers. Thanks
Appreciate
again.
your time, Gerardo. Thank you.
Likewise. Hey everybody, Gerardo Del Real here. If you're enjoying the content that you just saw, you can let us know in 3 simple steps. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please share across your network and on social media. Take care, everybody.